In September 1964, after a 10-month investigation, the Warren Commission delivered its single-volume report on the assassination of JFK to new President Lyndon Johnson. To no one's surprise, the Commission's principal finding was that the assassination was the work of Lee Harvey Oswald, a 24-year-old ex-Marine taken into custody within 90 minutes of the shooting. This had been a foregone conclusion almost since the day of the assassination. Oswald had been arrested and charged with remarkable speed, and media coverage of the assassination underscored the immediate claims of the Dallas police that Oswald was the assassin and that he had acted alone. Yet public uncertainty was there from the start. A Gallup poll taken a few weeks after the assassination showed more than half of those asked suspected there had been a plot to murder JFK. In the years since, those numbers have only grown. Immediately after the assassination, however, most Americans seemed content to leave the matter alone. But not all. About a dozen citizens, acting independently from one another, began unofficial investigations into the assassination. Like Philadelphia attorney Vincent J. Salandria, each was certain from the start that the truth was being withheld.
Dealey Plaza reeked of conspiracy, all of which may have been wrong. People heard more than 3 shots. Most of the witnesses thought the shots came from the grassy knoll. Zapruder thought the shots were coming from over his shoulder. All wrong, say, but that's what we had at that time. We had conspiracy.
The earliest Warren Report critics were mostly ordinary people. They included the publisher of a small-town newspaper named Penn Jones, Sylvia Marr, a researcher at the World Health Organization, a former state lawmaker from New York named Mark Lane, and poultry farmer and former Senate investigator Harold Weisberg. In lectures, articles, and books, they were the first to sound the alarm about Dallas. Most of them began independent research on the very day Kennedy was killed.
I was already on it. I was on it by that night without knowing where it was going to go.
Right.
I've always been interested in political events, and this was big and something was wrong.
That was Ray Marcus, a Los Angeles businessman who felt immediately that the declaration of Oswald as the sole assassin came too soon, that it could not have been known with certainty as early as it was reported. In Philadelphia, Vince Salandria felt much the same way. As the assassination drama played out on national television, Salandria and his brother-in-law, Harold Feldman, watched the coverage closely.
And we talked about Oswald, the alleged assassin. And we said that one had to maintain an open mind on the issue of whether or not he was the assassin and whether or not there was a conspiracy, but that open mind would have to close if during the course of the weekend Oswald was killed.
In New York, attorney Mark Lane was horrified. Lane was a former member of the state assembly who during his 1960 campaign had received the endorsement of JFK. Oswald's murder, Lane declared, was the final act in a series of events that had denied him his most fundamental constitutional rights. Barely 1 month after the assassination, Lane published a defense brief for Oswald in the National Guardian, and the story of a former lawmaker defending the accused assassin was picked up by the New York Times. Marguerite Oswald, Lee Harvey Oswald's mother, saw these articles and asked Lane to represent her dead son before the Warren Commission, then just beginning its work. Lane agreed to, but the commission would not allow it. Drawn further into the case, Lane declared that Lee Oswald had been railroaded.
I'm charging the FBI and the Secret Service with operating this case from a theory that Oswald was the assassin, that he acted alone, and I'm charging them with pursuing an investigation only along those lines and having no interest in any information which indicates anything contrary.
That spring, Lane established the Citizens Committee of Inquiry, an independent organization that would conduct its own investigation and work to keep a dissenting view before the public. Lane recruited volunteer investigators like Vince Salandria and Harold Feldman to travel to Dallas and interview witnesses.
Harold and I went to Dallas. We met with, and I remained with for 4 days, Marguerite Oswald and the mother of Lee Harvey Oswald. And we investigated the 10th and Patton killing of Tippit.
Establishing Oswald as the killer of Officer J.D. Tippit was critical to the Warren Commission in that it would demonstrate a need for Oswald to evade police and establish a propensity for violence. A key commission witness was Helen Markham, the sole eyewitness to the Tippit murder. Mrs. Markham told authorities that Oswald was indeed the killer, but after Salandria and Feldman interviewed Markham and her husband in their Dallas home, they came away with reason to believe that Helen Markham's testimony had been influenced.
I must say that before we got to her, that we saw a Dallas police car pulling away. When we spoke to those people, I've never seen that kind of terror. Their teeth were actually chattering, and we could get little from them because of their terror.
In September 1964, the Warren Commission published its official evidence, first in a bulky single-volume report that got a great deal of media attention, and 2 months later in a 26-volume set of hearings and exhibits. Each of the critics purchased a set of the 26 volumes and began comparing its raw data to the stated conclusions in the single-volume report. Independently, each of the critics reached the inescapable conclusion that the assassination could not have happened the way the Warren Commission said it did.
In simple form, if the crime was beyond the capability of any one man, then on that basis alone there was a conspiracy. And I've proved many ways, and I want to emphasize that I've done this only by the official evidence itself, that nobody was able to duplicate the shooting attributed to Oswald.
There was ample data in the 26 volumes showing flaws in the single-volume Warren report, but dissenting views were not popular during the first years after its publication, and gaining access to the media was difficult.
More than a year has passed since the death of our president, but not one national radio or television network has presented a single program, not one network program in America, which in any respect challenged the conclusions of the government.
The overwhelming message from the government and the media was that there had been no conspiracy. Harold Weisberg believed it was his duty to learn and report the truth.
I have always felt very strongly that the most important thing in this country is for the people to be fully and accurately informed. That goes back to the first days of this country. People risked their lives for that.
The assassination had taken place in a part of downtown Dallas called Dealey Plaza. The presidential motorcade was on its way from Love Field, where JFK had arrived around noon, to the Dallas Trade Mart, where he was scheduled to deliver a speech. The motorcade passed through Dealey Plaza around 12:30, and Kennedy was slain as he was driven past a building known as the Texas School Book Depository. Commission critic Penn Jones, who lived in nearby Midlothian, spent many hours reconstructing the crime.
The famous Dealey Plaza, this is the kill area where John Kennedy died. The Oswald window is the window down one story down from the top, and the corner window, that's the famous Oswald window. This is the spot where eyewitness S.M. Holland said he saw footprints in this area, and he heard the noise come from this area. He saw smoke drift out from under these trees from this area, and 5 or 6 men came over here with him, and they found the footprints up on this 2x4 here and up on the bumper of the car.